Okay, the most brutal thing. I just shot this video and then it got corrupted immediately on photo booth, which is brutal. But it is 2:33 a.m. and I had just finished cleaning my studio, and I should be going home and I will soon. But I'm kind of on a little thought train that I have to find the rails of again because I just shot this. And I kind of have a massive problem with essentially what I believe to be the narrowing of of discoverable human knowledge, and what that means and who's behind it. So I recently have seen some YouTube channels which aim to sort of summarize longer form content into 1 minute long, which I mean that would take quite a lot of effort. So it is again, or I guess for the first time because I've shot this already. It's content that I totally believe takes a lot of effort and is probably done thoughtfully. It looks good to me, but it's sort of a part of a greater trend, which is what I believe to be the intentional forfeit of the discovery process, which has been very fundamentally important to human achievement and human rights, and just many foundational components of what has got us to where we are today. Not to say where we are today is the best place ever, but we've made progress as humans, and that's sort of an important thing to think about. Okay, so I will cut the app. I read this tweet from Elon Musk, which essentially says that his intention on training his AI model is to rewrite the entire corpus of human knowledge and fill in missing information and deleting errors, and then retrain his new AI model on that, which is like some cyberpunk level, like straight up Dune supervillain sci-fi stuff already. And I mean, what's like, to me, that's wild to already post. You know what I mean? Like, that feels like you might maybe you're cooking in the morning for breakfast, and you're like, that's something you think about as sort of a rich tech billionaire supervillain, and you'd be like, haha. But to type that out and then to post it is, to me, that's already absurd. But it shines light on what I have a problem with, in that if you are to ask AI a question, and it provides you an answer, it is in line with exactly what the corporation responsible for training that model wanted it to spit out. For example, if I won't name particular AI companies, but there are a bunch, and each of them will have their own data set that they train their models on, and depending on what you ask or input into the model, it will output along the confines of what it is told is right or wrong. And who determines that is not other AIs, but humans. And there are going to be humans who are impacted by practically tech oligarchs, rich tech oligarchs who are completely detached, or who have preconceived biases. For example, if the retraining of a model based on the rewriting of the entire corpus of human knowledge is retrained, and is first and foremost, if the knowledge is rewritten in a way which impacts some community due to some biases of who is initiating the retraining, and then the model is retrained in a way that is made publicly accessible, and then people utilize that model to as a source of primary information, then that community who is impacted by said biases is on a one-way track to future dehumanization, or misunderstanding, in the way of stronger division lines being drawn through what has essentially become a information source that has biases intentionally programmed into them. Maybe not intentionally, but the possibility for them to be intentional, or the chance that they're not intentional, and have still made it in and become so impactful, is a problem nonetheless. And what scares me is that people who utilize these models seem to not really care about that. So we had books, before Google. We still have books, but we had books as our primary kind of way to go, libraries. And there were knowledge keepers, and there were people who were, there were experts in their field who you could source. And then there was Google, which, in my generation, we were all trained to find multiple sources, and if it kind of confirmed the same thing a few times, it was deemed relatively credible. Of course, we could confirm the wrong information a few times, but we had to look for that information ourselves, right? So hopefully you can see what I mean in that. Initially, you had the library, which is a vast source of knowledge, which of course not as vast as Google, but it was a bit more concentrated than that. There were criteria. Of course, some of the criteria had biases wired in, but there were criteria for publication, and it was accepted at one point, I guess, that a nation is built strong on its great minds, and so there was, of course, ego involved in that. Countries sort of there was an arms race for knowledge, right? And there was particular there was a particular standard to which literature would be included in credible libraries, right? Again, there's these biases could totally be wired in, but you had to walk into a library and utilize your own discretion as to what you pulled off the shelf, and maybe you didn't enjoy what you read in a book, so then you look for another, and so on, so on, so on, so on. The thing is that you could look for another. Google made that an even vaster source. More information would be sprinkled in, but it would be easier to find more information and faster. The thing of it is it was still like a library. You had to go and you had to learn and you had to look yourself. Now AI is a one-way street. So you had the library, you had Google, now you have AI. And you still have the library and you still have Google. Most countries will have these things and access to essentially professionals or experts in their field. Not all countries will, and I completely understand that. But then you hit the AI at the very bottom, and essentially it drops out the slop that it is exactly told by whoever is responsible for it, whichever corporation is responsible for it. It is told to put out a subset of information, which is essentially what Elon is talking about as the retraining or training based on what he wants or what he determines to be the entire corpus of human knowledge, which again I'm just there. So I essentially, to summarize the app, I recently saw a student show off his laptop screen to say, here I have graduated, but it was because of OpenAI, or it was because of ChatGPT, or it was because of whatever AI model, right? So then my problem becomes, okay, he's cheating, first and foremost, so we're going to have a huge workforce problem in that professionals aren't actually going to know their field. But secondly, if this guy does end up in the workforce, all he's going to know, say all he did was consume what AI kind of ingrained into him, is exactly what that model wanted him to know. Not only are we going to have a inexperienced professional, but we're going to have a pretty robotic one, who maybe has picked up speech patterns that were put out by the AI. The sycophantic AI, which is arguably one of the creepiest things ever to me. I've spoken about AI on this channel already, and I'll keep making these videos. Essentially, my concern comes to be, bluntly, that it has become clear and evident to me that in civilizations which have access to internet, Google, libraries, and professionals, we are opting now to choose to consume the very most condensed and fast source of information, which is often the most biased. And the problem with this becomes that it has not only implications for you financially, say you're not experienced or knowledgeable, but it has implications in the social and human rights lane, in the way of, if there are biases programmed into these models and we consume whatever they spit out to us unequivocally, then the people who are discriminated against, or who are impacted by the biases programmed into the model, become further and further and further marginalized for the sake of a legitimate lose-lose situation. They become more marginalized. We become less intelligent. If I was to be told that we would have a genuinely self-inflicted Fahrenheit 451 kind of experience in 2025, I would not believe it. I would believe it was something government mandated. The fact that we are so okay in our generation and generations before and after with the absolute consumption of slop is beyond me. And If I was to end it off on one thing, I would essentially just say, please do your best to double check your sources. If AI is one, then just check another, and then check another, and check another. If you're to make any critical or educated position, that's all I have to say about it. There's of course other problems that I have with AI, but this is not only an AI thing. It becomes sort of a modern world problem. Although, of course, there were problems in the past with data being misrepresented. Nowadays, it seems as though we are born into a world where we are told that's the case, but we have become completely okay with it in a world where we do not have to be. I will make more videos like this, but I don't really want to make a ton. I've recently found a big passion for tech and short film stuff, but if you do like this kind of content, just drop a sub, please. I would really appreciate it. And I will make a few more, and I'm going to cut my hair soon. It's just because of a short film that it's super long. And okay, so I'm going to press stop, and if it corrupts again, I'm going to make this again with the help of AI.